And the reverse is true for people who might have visions of grandeur. Okay, I'm a leader now. It's time for me to rule the world. Pinky and the brain. Um,
Okay, so thank you. So we are joined by Adeline. You work at Nestlé, and I understand that you are the global head of integrated leadership development. Am I right?
Spot on, Temi.
Well, thank you so much for agreeing to chat with us today, all about leadership. And I think this is such an interesting topic because, we're going to go into some of these concepts later. But, certainly when I grew up, the idea was that everybody wants to be a leader. That was sort of the thing that you aspired to become. And it seems from some of the research that you're doing that the sentiment may have changed. But before we go into that, I would really love to look into your global Nestlé Leadership Framework. And so I was doing some research. I understand, that you say it's been embedded into every single talent and HR process that you have. And really, it's a key backbone to your employee experience. So, I'd love to hear more about this framework and how it works across all of your employees.
Brilliant. And here's a testament to my predecessors. And I think it's important to know that, yes, I do work in Nestle, but I stand on the shoulder of giants. So I've got the very exciting job of helping 30,000 people leaders grow, 273,000 full-time employees all around the world in over 180 countries grow in leadership. But I don't do it alone. And what you spoke about with regards to the Nestle Leadership Framework, this is really testament to the legacy and to the political will of my predecessors, and as well as the leadership of Nestle to say, let's not just have a framework for the sake of a framework and put it on the wall, and then we're all happy with it. Let's make sure that we really live, breathe, embed it into every level of the organization. So the Nestle Leadership Framework, in summary, targets various levels of leaders within Nestle with what we say are our core leadership behaviors that is required for that level. For example, as an individual contributor, what we call at all employee levels, there are also leadership behaviors that one needs to build, enhance, and across the career and life cycle as he or she moves into a people leader role, into a senior leader role, that leadership behavior changes in terms of its form and also what is required for the business and for the person to succeed. That's what we meant with the Nestle Leadership Framework. It's embedded across our talent practices, our HR practices. It's in how we hire, it's in how we measure performance, not just the what, but the how that we deliver that performance. It's in how we review talent and plan for the future. It is truly integrated.
Oh, wow. So if I could ask you to pick one leadership behavior, if you had to pick one, which one would you say for you is the most important?
Wow, that's like saying which one of my five fingers I want to keep. Tell me. Okay, well, I can't say which one's the most important, but I can say one that resonates a lot with me. And if I may sneak, well, maybe two in, there are two that is absolutely critical in my view. One is what we call making a difference, and it's all about having that impact and about exerting that impact through whatever scope and whatever size of job that we have. And this, in an individual contributor, looks different to when this person is leading an entire business and a P&L of a total product globally. But when we look at making a difference, we talk about how do we do not just our job well, how do we push forward for excellence, how do we collaborate so that we can win together, how do we create that impact by collaborating, by encouraging, by connecting externally and internally. And very importantly, in Nestle, we talk about being a force for good. How do we live that out in whatever scope and whatever job and in whatever project that we do, so that we believe that we are big enough as an organization, but we are also big enough as a person to be that force for good, to really move that needle. So that's one that's huge on my radar. Another, well, I head up leadership development, so it's about growing people and teams. And in that individual contributor, it's about being self-aware, understanding what are my strengths, areas of development, so that I can enhance one, close gaps, leverage on the best of me to how do I coach and develop others, and to finally, as a leader of a huge organization, how do I strategically build organizational talents? So we believe very much in not just success in me, myself, and I, but it's in the legacy that we leave behind. And therefore, growing teams, growing people, that's absolutely critical.
Oh wow, that's really good. I think that when I think about, growing a team, well, first of all, I love the self-awareness piece, because I think it can be quite scary when you have a leader who isn't self-aware and doesn't have that time for introspection. And I think if you're thinking about growing a team and adding value in that way, I think it does start with looking inwards and looking at how you show up, because oftentimes people will follow by example. And I think that a lot of energy that comes from making an impact, it starts from being curious. And so I would love to know how you define curiosity and how it's sort of shown up in your life.
I love how you made that bridge between self-awareness and curiosity. I think that's really spot on, right? No one can force someone to be curious, nor force him or her to be self-aware. And yet that's the bedrock on which we build everything else on. Curiosity is a key thing, not just for us at Nestle, but for me personally. I could share very broadly with you with regards to curiosity being our North Star, and I can share about it being in my life as well. And this links very lovely. In a very lovely way to what you mentioned about self-awareness. We talked about being curious about myself. What are my strengths and where are my areas of gaps? But not just that. What are my motivations? What's important to me? What are my values? What makes me tick? What drives me? And I think if we are curious about ourselves and we afford ourselves that search to say, okay, what really makes me tick? What really gives me satisfaction? Then we end up being more fulfilled people, more engaged employees, more effective leaders, and just a more purposeful business leader. And you can't have the latter without the former. And we talked about that because we talk about curiosity about self as a way of not just searching deep within and going into meditation, even though that might be the case for some people, but just being very clear about who am I? How do I show up? And what's important to me? And how do I continue to give back? Because otherwise, the danger is that we could be climbing a ladder and in a few years' time realize that it's leaning against the wrong wall. So that's very much my ethos with regards to curiosity and self-awareness. In Nestle, we talk about being curious about your team, being curious about others, because then it's seeing the strengths and the diversities of everyone around the table and valuing that, leveraging that, acknowledging that, and celebrating that, instead of saying that everyone needs to be cookie cutter. So that's very important for me as well as someone who heads integrated leadership development. We talk about psychological safety and bringing the best out from your team so that we can be better than the sum of our parts. And that's being curious about others, about what they bring to the table and creating space, advocating for them, being an ally for the ones who are different from you. Two, being curious about the organization and understand that we all exist within an organization and having that empathy as well, sometimes for the organization, knowing what's important to the business. In HR, we talk a lot about individuals and teams, and that's not wrong. That's great. But we need to understand the context in which these operate so that we could build these up for the organization to succeed. It's not one without the other. And it's about making that alignment happen, helping people connect with that so that they could see what's the grand vision, what's the big, hairy, audacious goal, and then find their parts to contribute towards it. And very importantly, the final bit is this to be curious about the ecosystem. And that means beyond our organization, it's about other organizations, other people, our communities, countries that we operate in, the environment, and knowing that we don't live in a vacuum. Being curious with what makes it tick, what is required, so that we can then be an answer to part of the circular economy, to part of the grander ecosystem. And then it goes back to self-awareness, being curious about self again and realigning and saying, how do I then now adjust myself with this double loop learning so that I can learn more about myself in this whole virtuous cycle? So that's my philosophy for curiosity as well.
I love that. And what I'm hearing from what you're saying, or what I'm taking away is that, being a leader is a huge undertaking. It's a lot of work because, we're just talking now about having that introspection, that self-awareness. What are my values? What do I like? How do I show? What's my purpose? So you're navigating that, which are huge existential questions. And then on top of that, you're then like leading and growing a whole team and kind of leaning into empathy and making sure that you're also making an impact. And so maybe it isn't that surprising, that I've heard you share that today people are actually less interested in becoming leaders. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Is that, was that some research that you conducted in your own organization, or is that just more you've been reading? And why do you think that is?
And I think it's an important one that you're putting on the table right now, Temi. That's in the past, well, with our parents, maybe, well, with my parents, we are clearly not of the same generation, and I would
We're
hate to
close.
date you
We're close.
unfairly. um, in my over 20 years of work, I have realized that we can have a hypothesis, but until we have data and insights to back that up, we're not sure. So yes, we do conduct our internal research, but this was what I'm referring to actually came from Harvard Business Review and a survey from Career Builder even years ago. In the past, we always thought, well, I always thought that, well, isn't that the right progression, right? Um, you do your job well and you move into a role where then you help other people grow, you become a people manager or a team leader. And it seemed like at that time, 20 years ago, the type of career path, if I may say, for most people within the corporate world or within the working world. But we've realized even 15 years ago, 10 years ago, that there are multiple paths. And even with Harvard Business Review, in about 10 years ago, less than 10 years ago, as part of their research, as well as with Career Builder, they realized that more people are saying that they don't want this unenviable job of being a people manager. Because to your point, there is a lot of responsibility. Uh, Spider-Man got it, right? With great powers come great responsibility. There is that burden on a people leader, on a team leader, a manager, to at first do no harm. And if every single person has got their individual needs, motivations, skills, strengths, it's hardly easy then to say, that's how one size fits all. That's how you manage a team. It's about taking a step back and saying, how do I treat the other person with respect, treat everyone in that team with individualized, personalized way to develop, to grow. And that takes intent, that takes skill, and that takes consciousness. And not everyone wants that anymore. And I think that kind of realization is equally important because in the past, people felt like that was the only way to grow. If I wanted to draw a higher salary, this was the only way. But now people ask that question, do I want to become a people leader? As in, and if I bring that to the natural world, do I want to become parents? People are asking those questions of themselves because there is great responsibility involved. Well, though it's not exactly the same. And therefore, with the data, it showed that only 36% said that they were keen to want to become people managers. And we didn't do a survey in recent years after the COVID. So I can't tell you what the recent data is, but sentiment qualitatively is that that number may not have even improved because this is becoming so much harder. Personalization has become so much more important. And frankly speaking, not many people are skilled to become a people leader nor want to pursue that. So they say, let me take a specialist path. And there's nothing wrong with that. But my call and my ask of a lot of us is this: yes, being a people leader is not always the most attractive and most beautiful job every day. It's like being a new parent. You have to change diapers. There are off days, but the reward of it is great because you will have the chance to impact. I come back to making a difference again and grow someone, not just for today, because what he or she gleans from you, he or she can carry it on and pay it forward. So it's not easy, but I still think it's an important job to be a people leader. And I think it also falls on the organization to say, let's equip people with the right skills and the right clarity of what it takes to be a people leader.
I love that. So if somebody came to you and said, you know what, I have no interest in being a people leader, would your natural inclination be to persuade them otherwise and to maybe make them realize that there is a leader within them? Or would you start really with the idea that actually not everyone is called to do that and really move them towards a specialist path? Like, how do you, because I often feel like sometimes if we haven't done the work on ourselves, we often have limited beliefs. So we might not even see the leader that's within us. And so sometimes we don't have that confidence. So what is your approach when somebody comes to you and says, oh, I'm not interested in that? Do you try and bring that out of them, or do you respect that, their position, and sort of move them towards a more maybe specialist sort of road path?
I love that question because the answer could be a mix, right? To your point. And I say this to people all the time. Like when when a baby is born, the doctor looks at the baby and says, "Congratulations, you've got a baby boy, a baby girl." No one knows, no one gets this upon their birth. Congratulations, you have a leader. A leader is born. To your point, we don't know what we don't know, and yet at the same time, the importance of letting someone choose becomes so important. That agency. So maybe I would I always fall back to the three C's. Firstly, what I would do is clarity. Give clarity of what being a people leader means, and also what it doesn't mean. So sometimes people get overwhelmed because they go like, the fate of the universe is in my hands. And to your point, then they self-select out before it's necessary. But giving clarity on what it means to transition from an individual contributor to a team leader. What does it mean? What shifts? What's important now? What is no longer important now? And what got you here won't get you there. Being very clear with that. And the reverse is true for people who might have v- visions of grandeur. Okay, I'm a leader now. It's time for me to rule the world, Pinky and the Brain, and helping them say, hey, it's not about you getting the spotlight for being a leader. It's not about being an egomaniac. It's about helping other people succeed and calibrating that clarity. I think that's the first thing. And to your point, that's what I always do first. Clarify and say, okay, you said you're not keen. Tell me more. Why? What does it look like in your mind? And having very often, I see 80% of the time when people are clear of what it is and what it is not, then they can choose. And then the second piece is this, the capacity and that piece to choose, to know that I have agency. I can still choose, and the organization trusts me to choose, and I will have a path that makes sense for me. But then also with capacity, the third piece that goes in hand with capacity is capability. To know that, okay, this I have the clarity now of what it takes and what's important for me. Then on one hand, I need to expand my capacity. I need to want it. On the second side, someone is setting me up for success. My capabilities would be built to be able to do that well. And I think the want to do it, the will, and also the can do it, the capability needs to go hand in hand so that we set people up for success and not up for failure. And very often when you speak to people, you realize that people self select. That's because they're not sure what that role entails, but it's also because they've either been burned very badly by a very poor team leader, and they don't feel like they have the agency nor the capability to be able to do that job well. And as an organization, when we can give them clarity, when we can help build their capability and expand their capacity, I think we will have more leaders and more purposeful leaders who can really make a difference.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And then I think my final question to you would really be looking at you. Why did you want to become a leader? You kind of referenced before sort of your parents taught you, but why did you want to become a leader, and what key lessons have you learned on your leadership journey?
And here's where I'll go into a bit of setting the context and who I am and how I've come from. So my family, yeah, we've got very strong values within the company, even though it's a hybrid family. My dad's side of the family come from the States. My mom's from Malaysia, and currently I'm working in Europe. So you can imagine sometimes that mishmash of different cultures and what's important. But one of the key things that has always resonated within me is to leave the world in a better place than from when I came. And in my early days, I started out as a chemical engineer. I was the only female chemical engineer where I was interning. There was just a little bit of a wow, okay, I'm wearing a hard hat. I'm the only woman here in boots, and I lead people twice my age. And I realized very quickly that these people that I was leading knew so much more about how the operations and the distillation plant ran than me. And all I could do was recognize their value, create space for them to grow, listen to them, and support them as they did their best work by removing boundaries, barriers, and creating boundaries that help them grow. And I realized very quickly that what was important to me was about helping people grow. That was a red thread in my career. And so even when I went into the other part of the organization, when I was doing a brand management, when I was in commercial part of the business, what always sparked my interest was about helping talents grow, helping organizations grow, helping teams grow. And very naturally, even though at that point I didn't think it was natural, I was doing consulting, I was in the business, I was in HR, I was doing change, but I always gravitated to helping people grow, be it my team, be it others. And I realized that that was what made me tick. Coming back one full circle to what you spoke about self awareness. If this is then important to me, then helping people grow and helping them pay it forward was going to be something that would give me fulfillment. And therefore, that's what I would like to do, be it in this organization or the next, in one role or another. And I think as leaders, as HR professionals, we have a huge mandate that, we could always help people grow one way or another. And that's been my journey. And I hope it doesn't stop there.
Oh, that's fantastic. It feels like from the start of your career, you had an ability to just stop and really say, what do I really want? And I think the ability to sort of recognize that actually I really enjoy helping people, and then go after that and create that in your career, I think is such an amazing quality. But I do think that I see that in a lot of leaders, in that they have, like we say, they have that self-awareness to understand, like, what do I actually want to do? Like, what is my purpose? I know that what is purpose? It's such a huge word, but do you think that I see that among leaders? They have this real sense of what it is that they want to do, what it's their call to do, and they really just run after it. And I think that it's great that you were able to achieve that in your own career as well. So first of all, I want to just say thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. We really enjoy you being a part of our community, and the best bit, this isn't the end, because you're joining us for our executive development session in Amsterdam on the 7th and the 8th of November. So for anybody who's watching this and is, I love Adeline, I would love to hear more, you can come and join our session. If you are a CLO or a leadership, we would love to invite you to join, and you'll be sharing some more insights as well. It's just a preview of what you can expect there. But thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. We've really enjoyed it, and we look forward to more collaborations in the future.
Temi, thank you so much. I have to again give caveat to what you mentioned. I didn't always start out being self-aware. And I think, in all fairness, I had so many people who took bets on me when I was way younger in my career, who gave me feedback, who mentored me, who challenged me. And I would encourage all of us to surround ourselves with people like that. And in a space like iVentiv, where you have peers that challenge one another and um, what does that saying go? Like iron sharpening iron. So
Yeah, it is.
looking forward, and it's a pleasure being part of this interview with you, Temi, and with the rest of the community. It's always a pleasure to grow together and looking forward to seeing everyone else.
Thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of the day. And yeah, see you later on over here.
See you.